started. We are going to, as we always try to do, open up with prayer so that we will make sure that everyone has the guidance that we need as we go forward. And for that, we're going to ask our Chair of Religious Affairs, Minister Bridget Edwards. Minister Edwards, if you could.
Madam President, let us go to the throne of grace. Eternal God and Father, we're grateful for yet another day, another opportunity, God, to gather. As we gather tonight, we pray, Lord, for clarity of vision and purpose. We ask, Father, that you would allow us to become informed voters, God, and let this candidate forum go forward in truth. Let it be informative, and we ask that your spirit would be in our midst. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Minister. What we'd like to do is just talk a little bit about the organizations that are partnering this evening. Um, of course, when we talk about partnerships, we talk about members of the Divine Nine usually because we have national partnerships as well. But equally, if not more so important, is the local partnerships, and we're very fortunate here in Broward that we have partners who, such as Alpha Kappa Alpha, Zeta Rho Omega Chapel. Let's just say that who have stepped up and answered the call. And so we want to know you all to know that this is a joint effort. There is power in unity. We know that, we believe it, and we try to make sure that we live it. And so my one of my first calls is to Dr. Osgood, who has yet to say no when it comes to doing something for our people and informing our folk of the facts. And so we saw that we had an election on November 2nd. We saw that the turnout was poor. Those are black districts, predominantly black districts. And the turnout was dismal. It was embarrassing. We have a tendency to not read enough, to not be informed enough. Somehow we just don't know. And as we made phone calls within the last few weeks, folks just did not know that there was an election going on. So we all have got to do better of letting folk know that there is an election and who the candidates are. And so as we move around, we're hearing from folk that they just don't know who the candidates are. That there's an election, and those that do are just not clear who they are. So the purpose of tonight is for you, the candidates, to take this opportunity to tell us who you are. And before we do that, I want Dr. Osgood to tell us about the organization that she is representing here this evening, along with her sisters, and because this is a partnership, and they have had something to say in the last election, and we'll continue on with the partnership. But we have got to do better. We've got to stop making excuses. Some folk didn't tell us. But we need to be about the business, and our black folk and our black vote needs to simply wake up. And with that, Dr. Osgood.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll start off by saying Habar Ghani, or Happy Kwanzaa. Today is the second day of Kwanzaa when we observe Kuja Shakalia, which means self-determination, meaning that we have the right to speak, we have the right to vote, we have the right to define our own self. I am privileged and honored to be the president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Zeta Rho Omega chapter, the premier chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Alpha Kappa Alpha has a total of 5 chapters in Broward County. We are internationally 400,000 strong, and we are committed to scholarships for kids, community service, and of course, making sure that our rights, our voting rights are intact and that we are voting. We have a special interest when it comes to Black women. As the Divine Nine, inclusive of all the Greek organizations, came together recently to make sure that we elected a president and a vice president that was going to represent our issues. So I certainly tip my hat tonight to all the members of the Pan-Hellenic Council who are working together. As you said, Madam President, there is strength in numbers. And we know that in Broward County, nothing really happens without the Pan-Hellenic Council and the great work that we all do. We're excited to co-sponsor tonight's forum with the NAACP. We're looking for future opportunities to work with other like-minded organizations that are concerned about our community, concerned about electing people into office, that's going to have an interest in the things that we care about. As we've seen recently, all of the media attacks on Vice President Kamala Harris has been very interesting. But we know, Judge Holmes, as Black women, we get treated differently in the media than other sectors and other groups. So we're particularly interested in candidates that are going to take a stand and make sure that Black women are treated fairly. Thank you to all the members of the Zeta Rho Omega chapter that have joined us tonight. I don't see enough of you on here, so you will receive a text from me shortly. But we want to show up in our community and we want to show up strong. And Madam President, I am so honored tonight to have leading and representing our chapter 2 of our 70 new members. We get involved in AKA and we get them busy working. We have a saying where we say pretty work and pretty worship. So I'm happy to see the 2 new members representing tonight, and we look forward to a great forum. And thank you so much for your leadership. And we're committed. We're going to register more of our members to become registered members of the NAACP. I have a goal to have 100% AKA membership in the Zeta Rho Omega chapter in the NAACP. And I'm going to work diligently on that in 2022. God bless you. And thank you to all the candidates for representing tonight.
Thank you so much, Doc. And we certainly appreciate all of the hard work that all of our partners do. And so let's take this opportunity to get down to business. So I was just had one of our members left office just a short time ago. And the question was, who are these guys? I just don't know who they are. So I said, well, you're in luck, because now you have an opportunity for them to tell you who they are. And these folk they've not voted. They're holding on to their ballot so that they can make an informed decision. And so that's the best news I've heard all day. Let's start with the candidates. And I want you to take 3 minutes and tell us who you are. We will start with Mr. Kemp, Mr. Roderick Kemp. You have the floor, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to participate in this candidate forum. My name is Rod Kemp, better known as Roderick Kemp. I've lived in the district my entire time. Here, my kids were born and raised. My daughter went to Dillard Performing Arts. And I have been in Leadership Broward. I've served on the Affordable Housing Advisory Board for Fort Lauderdale. I've been on the Charter Revisions Board for Fort Lauderdale, where we make amendments, excuse me, to the charter to keep up with the changing times here. I also was part of the original charrette many years ago, when we started talking about a lot of the things that you see on Sistrunk Boulevard right now. And I also was on the Finance and Audit Committee over a $90 million fund for a lot of the local community development corporations here in South Florida. So it is my desire to take that experience and that passion to the Capitol and to have the honor of representing our vibrant and diverse community. I also recently was working with the Biden campaign. I was part of a statewide coalition for Second Chance Voters, where we held online forums about the upcoming presidential election and how important it is when somebody gets their rights restored. And speaking of getting rights restored, I personally have experienced having my voting rights taken away and fought to get them back. And so I know what it feels like. I am a reflection of those out there who are still fighting to get their voting rights back. And I will continue the effort, as I did when we fought to get Amendment 4 on the ballot. So again, thank you for this opportunity to introduce myself, and I look forward to further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will go with Mr. Manley, Elijah Manley, candidate for State House District 94. Tell us who you are, sir.
Thank you, and good evening, and thank you for organizing this, Madam President. As you said, I'm Elijah Manley, running for state rep here in District 94. I'm a proud product here of Fort Lauderdale, grew up right on Sistrunk and 20th Avenue, and I am a proud graduate of Fort Lauderdale High School and attending Broward College to study history. You know, I've been active in this community for several years since I was a little boy, walking the streets and organizing for racial justice and criminal justice reform. I started doing that, going to school board meetings and speaking up about issues that matter to me. And I got involved mostly on the criminal justice front after my aunt Linda Sue Davis was murdered by BSO. She was shot 13 times in her back. She had mental health illnesses. So since that happened, you know, I've been involved, and especially with criminal justice reform. But I've been talking a lot about education reform. I've been talking about housing and how that crisis affects us all. You know, as a young person growing up, we experience chronic homelessness, and that issue really speaks to why I'm involved in politics, because I really do believe that the decisions that are made in Tallahassee at our state capitol really affect our community and all of us. And it's important to have people in the positions that understand these issues in a personal way. And so, you know, I'm running because I do believe I'm the best candidate to do that. And like Mr. Kemp has said, voting rights is an important issue facing our state right now. My mom actually got her rights restored for the first time after Amendment 4 and was able to vote for her son in the previous election. And my heart is extremely happy about that my mom got the opportunity to, you know, vote for the first time, yet for her son after her rights were taken away from her and then given back. You know, I know this community. I love this community. I know this district. I know the issues that this district wants their next state representative to tackle. And I won't be a stranger. I've been to Tallahassee 5 times over the past 5 legislative sessions, tackling issues from LGBT equality to criminal justice, to what they did right now with HB1. I was one of the loudest voices fighting against that here at home with the Black Lives Matter Alliance of Broward County. And so I know that, you know, in Tallahassee, with everything we're facing and the assault that we're going to see in our state on Black people, let's just be, you know, blatant with it. The attack that we're going to see from Republicans in an election year against Black people takes someone who know these issues, who know how to talk about these issues, and who can fight the governor, who can fight, you know, Republicans in Tallahassee, and also get things done for our district. So again, I thank you all for having me here, and I look forward to this discussion.
Thank you so much. Mr. Campbell, Darrell Campbell, candidate for State House District number 94. Who are you, sir?
Well, good evening. Good evening. Thank you for having this forum. My name is Darrell Campbell. I am a candidate running for State Representative District 94. I am an active member of the NAACP, and I am a current PhD student at Howard University. By trade, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I currently counsel individuals in our community struggling with mental health issues. I grew up in this community, and so everything I've done from here on has been devoted to my passion for my community. I currently also, while counseling individuals in our community, I worked for the current legislator, Representative Bobby DuBose, as his legislative aide in this past session. And I was his campaign manager in 2020 for his reelection of this very same seat. And so I'm coming to you all, just sharing my story and wanting to continue to move our leadership forward. I think, being from this community, we learn a lot from those that have been ahead of us and teaching us what it is that we need to focus on. And so for me, I've been learning those issues. I've been serving those issues for a while now, and I'm still learning because the issues are constantly changing. They're constantly compounding as we continue to move further in the year and into the new year. And so I want to continue fighting those issues. My focus is mental health, first and foremost, education, economic development, and criminal justice reform. And so I want to continue doing that and making sure that I continue to be a voice for this community. So I look forward to the conversation that we're about to have tonight, and I can't wait to let people know why they should be voting for me.
Okay. Thank you so much. And so with that, we are going to do a couple of things. Those of you in the audience, if you have a question, please put that question in the chat. We are going to, before we wait for your questions to come in, if there are, we are going to hear from 3 representatives from Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated who are going to ask questions, and I don't know what they are, so I'll be happy to hear those. We don't require we don't screen questions. We want to know what we want to know, and we want to see what you have to answer, and we'll, hopefully they will be able to get some good information and find out if either of you will be the candidate of our choice. We can start with Ms. Cunningham.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
And my first question is for Mr. Darrell Campbell. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Hi, Mr. Campbell. As an educator for Broward Public Schools, I see that as part of your platform for education, you want to increase salaries and benefits of teachers and improve teachers' working conditions. How do you plan to do that?
Thank you for the question. So yes, I do want to do all that. First and foremost is that I want to make sure that I'm working with members of the school board in ensuring that I know the issues thoroughly to make sure that the people who receive these increases are definitely accounted for. I want to make sure that not only do we increase wages, but they are livable wages, because as we know here in Florida, the wages, the minimum wages that we are talking about now do not suffice with the cost of living here. And so I want to make sure that is definitely at the forefront. So I'm definitely looking forward to working with school board members and figuring out where the boundaries lie as far as state legislators, and so that we're not overstepping our boundaries in, allowing them to govern govern accordingly. And so I also want to make sure that we implement a home rule so that these school board members can actually do what they need to do instead of state coming in and actually pulling the plug and telling them where they should be putting the money and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
You can go ahead with your next question since we're here. That'd be fine. Okay.
That was it for me. The other candidate isn't here.
Okay. All right. We will go to Miss Lakeisha Justice Williams. And if you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all who are here tonight. My question is also for Darrell. Darrell, I know you mentioned that you were focusing on mental health, and I want to know what is your take or how you're planning on moving things forward after this pandemic, or during this pandemic, should I say, as it relates to our mental health needs during the pandemic.
Thank you for that question. So one of the things that I'm currently doing is looking at is finding where what's going on. As a matter, we've seen in September that we saw 4 million people leave their jobs, and so we want to know where are these people going and what are they doing, and what is the reason by that? What's the impact? And so my thought is definitely mental health. For a lot of us, we've seen a no boundary type of environment set by current jobs, and so I want to make sure that people are starting to take care of themselves and make sure that they are focusing on themselves. And so I want to pass legislation that allows for that. One of the things that we notice is that those individuals who are uninsured cannot get the help that they need. If we're talking about the type of help needed right now in this pandemic, we need to make sure that we expand Medicaid. And so not expanding Medicaid has has left a good amount of people, Floridians, uninsured. And so we should take root of our states that have accepted Medicaid and expanded Medicaid and see that they are people that do take disease insurance, get on insurance, do take preventative measures. We're seeing less people in emergency rooms. We're seeing less people in the urgency care being used for the reasons why we created that. And so I want to make sure those policies are implemented, and then also making sure that when we pass any type of legislation, such as environment, infrastructure, we know that the idea between how does this affect our district, how does it affect our community members is at the forefront of that focus.
Thank you very much.
Let me ask, if I could, to each of you. So there has been very few days, other than the days when the schools were closed, where we are not hearing, children being arrested for threats, or, schools having issues with weapons being brought to school. And so clearly something is going on. So tell me what your thoughts are about what is going on with our students. And what do you say to the educators who are having to deal with the different situations with our children? And let's start with how about Mr. Manley?
Thank you. Yeah, so, this issue unfortunately isn't new, and there hasn't really been an uptick in this issue because the schools were closed so long. There were, less opportunities for, kids to take guns to school and kill other children because the schools were closed. Now that schools are open, unfortunately, in this country, we're seeing an uptick in gun violence on our campuses that threaten our educators, our students, and their families. And so, I think, as we reopen the country, the state, and our schools, which I don't think should have happened, but unfortunately, we have a governor who thinks otherwise and who doesn't care about our community. We need to be looking at ways to engage the parents in the conversation in our schools, because what we're seeing right now, we have a lot of parents that are not engaged. And I also think, when we're talking about guns and guns on campuses and stuff like that, I think there needs to be stricter penalties for parents who don't adequately and rightfully keep their guns stored away so that their kids can't get it. If your kid can go and get a gun and take another child's life, another parent's child away from them, you should face the charges in your child as well, and you should be thrown in prison for that. I believe that strongly. I mean, what I say to our educators, I say, keep going strong. We're there for you. We hear you. We see you. We're going to fight for you. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that this governor and the Republicans, don't try to arm teachers and put more responsibilities on them like we've seen. We're going to do our best to try to get control on this gun violence epidemic that we're seeing hit our communities, in our schools. And this is a larger discussion too, not just about gun violence, but about accountability, personal responsibility, and how that relates to parents. And I think parents need to have a stronger role, because we know the kids that are doing this. This isn't, these are kids that look a certain way, bringing guns to schools and taking the lives of other kids. And we've seen this violence for far too long. And we see this uptick, now that schools are reopening and there's more in-person learning, we're unfortunately going to see more stuff like this happen. So this is a national conversation that needs to be had on the state level as well, about how we address gun violence and how we protect our communities and our schools. And the way to do that is not through militarizing our schools and putting more police officers on campus. The way to do that is hold parents accountable for their children, and also find other innovative ways to keep our schools safe.
So let me just say this. So let me make sure I'm understanding you correctly. So you're suggesting that the parents be incarcerated for if a child, under any circumstances, takes a gun that's not secured. Is that what you're saying?
So
let me just give you an example real quick. So one of our local 33311 schools, a 10-year-old finds a gun that his single mother had for security and was stashed away in somewhere where she believed that he could not locate it. He finds this unloaded weapon and basically does a show and tell thing. He's 10. So you're suggesting is what should have happened was that mom should have been arrested because she did not secure the gun properly and the child took the gun to school?
So, of course, there's going to be gray areas and situations, regarding these issues. I mean, when there's obvious, like, gross negligence, when, there's parents that have their guns just laying around and the child can easily get access to it, I think those are cases and situations where there needs to be criminal charges. But obviously, not every situation is, that black and white. Some situations have, gray areas. A child, finds a way to get into things. In a case, like in my household growing up, when my parents had a weapon, it was stored away. But, as kids always find a way to get into something. But, there needs to be steps taken by the parent to keep their firearm away from the child. But in many of these cases, like what we saw in Parkland, where and a lot of recent shootings that happened this year, where, these parents are allowing they're buying guns for their kids. They have them laying under the mattress in the room, or they're letting their kids know where these weapons are. In situations where there's negligence, and the parents could have done more and didn't out of negligence or incompetence, in that situation, there needs to be criminal charges. But if there's something accidental that happened and occurred, I don't think the parents should be charged for that. So there's gray areas here and there, but in the situations where there aren't gray areas, where we know what they should have done according to the law and basic common sense, and they don't do that, then they need to be held accountable for their child.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Could you repeat the question again? Because
So we have seen, several times a week prior to school ending, where there were weapons found at school. There were, fights in school. There have been, a lot of threats from all over. And it's not just a Broward County problem. But we're talking specifically Broward County here, since that's where your district is. What are your thoughts on, what's happening in our schools? What do you say to the educators? As I look, I see a ton of educators here. What do you say to the parents? What are your thoughts what do you think is happening with our children in our schools as we sit?
Okay, so let's address the children first. We live in an age of technology where everything is immediate gratification and it's right in your hands. So I believe that what normally would happen as far as interacting with each other, we are interacting in an autonomous way. We're being more bold about our feelings and our thoughts and the insults that they hurl at each other. And for me, that sends up a red flag that mental health is vitally important. Every middle school and high school should have a mental health counselor. Secondly, the teachers are under a lot of stress. And if anybody needs a raise, it would be the teachers. The teachers need a raise. The teachers need counseling as well. I think that, like I said, with the onset of technology and so much information, kids are getting desensitized. Now, as far as holding parents responsible, yes, I agree there's a gray area, but, I'm the son of a military dad and he bought me a gun, but it wasn't until I was 14, 15 years old. And if I had walked out the house with my gun, I would have been slapped upside the head. So there definitely has to be some accountability in certain circumstances as far as parents are concerned. And those are my thoughts.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you for the question. First, let me just say to the teachers, to the bus drivers, to anybody that works with children, my prayers are always with you. I know this difficult time is not easy, and we are asking you to do some miracles in what's going on. And so we need to make sure that teachers are there to teach the students and not focused on whether or not do they need to carry a concealed weapon inside of a school just to be law enforcement. And so that's first and foremost. Secondly, is that we need to focus on we need to look at our students and see what is going on within either in school or outside of school and the services that we need to provide for them. I sit down with students every month, every week, and talk with them just to see where their head is at and what they're doing. And some of our students are losing parents in this pandemic. And so we got to take a step back and actually show some empathy and really recognize where are our students at and how can we support them within our legislation. And so I know for me, I definitely want to make sure that whoever puts in legislation, I will definitely support any type of legislation that is focusing on our teachers and our school system and our students' mental well-being in moving forward. And so that's where I stand, and that's where I always will continue to stand.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lithcutt.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I know we were talking about serious crimes, so this question is going to go to Mr. Manley. I was on your site and looking at your platform, and you spoke about diversion programs. So I would like to know how you will plan to work with the justice system on equaling the playing field. For instance, I see many of you go into the system when they can possibly go into diversion programs, based on their skin color or their demographics as far as money is concerned. So how do you plan to work with the justice system to equal that playing field out?
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that question. I'll say I was really proud of what State Attorney Harold Pryor did. In many cases, to enter these diversion programs, there has to be an admission of guilt. He ended that, or he's working on that. So I think that's an important first start. I don't really think, especially for minor crimes, that a child, when they make for something petty, like they stole from the store or they did something where they can definitely learn and not repeat that same crime. I don't think we should be throwing those kids in jail. That's not a responsible thing to do. I think it's important to have, some state legislation around this issue, supporting more diversion programs. Of course, I don't think that's going to pass the Republican legislature. So a lot of the work has to be done locally with the criminal justice system here. Making sure there's conversations between the state attorney's office, the sheriff's office, the public defender's office, and making sure that there's that constant communication. And I think, it's important that we have more diversion programs. I was strongly in favor of Promise program. When they tried to tear that apart, I was, speaking loud in favor of that. And I think there needs to be a few more programs to support our young people, especially young people that might, get in trouble for, minor petty crimes. Obviously, serious crimes are another story. That needs to be looked into a little differently. But I think in many of these cases, we have to give our kids second chances. We need to look at more diversion programs. I'll support those programs wherever they come from. If they come from Tallahassee, which I don't think is likely, then I'll support them. But, locally, I think a lot of that work has to be done here. And I think in Broward County, we're doing an okay job. There's some things I like to see, some more things I like to see happen. But of course, with Tallahassee, there's preemption. We try to do good things here and they try to throw it out. So there's a lot of work that has to happen on that front. But I think, looping the school system in, looping the state attorney's office in with the sheriff's office, with the public defender, get the municipal elected officials involved. We can do a lot more to keep our kids off the street and in the school where they belong or on a job somewhere. And I think part of what we need to do to prevent crime too, because a lot of what we do is to respond to, a child committed a crime. What do we do now? How do we prevent our kids from committing crimes? Part of that is we need to give our kids something to do. When I was growing up and, getting out of school and it was the summertime and I didn't have anything to do, sometime I'm, walking around with the wrong crowd, and you have kids that are going around with the wrong crowd and they're in those situations because they are with the wrong people at the wrong time and not because they're bad kids. So I think, there's a lot of legislation that can happen around that. And there's a lot of local work and local conversations that need to be had as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Campbell, same question.
Can you repeat that question, please?
Okay, so the question was, let me go back to my notes. How do you plan to work with the Department of Justice to ensure that youth commit minor crimes are treated equally in regards to entry and diversion programs, despite the racial and economic differences?
Thank you for that. So one of the first things is looking at how are the diversion programs working currently. I think starting from where we're sitting at right now will definitely help to see if they are working adequately. Are they efficient enough? Do we need to add more? What do we need to add and subtract and take away from all of that? Then also putting in legislation that adds in support for our juveniles, our children that have non-behavioral, non-violent, but behavioral issues. And so we want to look at that and see how can we implement certain changes within our legislation that allows the support to these to our state government. And so just looking at it and identifying that way will definitely allow us to really see how to move forward in that instance.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp.
Yes, I agree that we really need to focus on it at the local level. We need to see what works for us, how programs are running now, what can we do to tweak them, and hopefully we could use that as a blueprint to create a bill in the state legislature that can be replicated throughout the state, especially in communities of color. The diversion program, I think, is a great idea. I think also too, you have some students that academically they're frustrated, and maybe the traditional trajectory of learning certain subject matters isn't for them, and they're not going to be college bound. I think we need to enhance vocational skills for kids that, they're just better at getting gratifications at working with their hands and learning a trade. And it's very fulfilling for many. There was a program over in England where they took some students that weren't doing so well in school, and they had an agreement with the local municipalities and industries and companies that, hey, can you accept a student into your apprenticeship program? So that by the time they're old enough to graduate from high school, they will have a trade that they know. So I think that, it's an ongoing and evolving situation. And I think that we can always improve upon it. Thank you.
Miss Justice Williams, is there another question?
Yes, thank you. My next question is for Mr. Kemp. Mr. Kemp, I noticed that you had some focuses on resources and assistance for family caregivers. What is your plan on assisting family caregivers in helping their family as they age and as we look at aging?
Thank you. Thank you for presenting that question. My thoughts on this, obviously, part of it would have to do with the expansion of Medicaid. And there are some programs where other states are working on a master plan on aging, because we are finding out that, a lot of people sending your elders to a rest home isn't always the best idea. A lot of times it's a lot more beneficial and mentally healthy for our loved ones to remain in the home or surrounded by family who's willing to support them. And I think that we need to figure out a way of allowing some resources to go to family caretakers, much in the same way, a nursing home or a nursing facility, they send a nurse out, they get paid by Medicaid. We should be able to have some type of program that it can go to family individuals. Of course, they would probably have to meet some type of criteria and profile as far as their income, their living circumstances. But I think it's something that we can definitely address and we should consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cunningham?
Yes, this question is for all of the candidates. As far as healthcare goes, How do you all plan to implement a better and a more affordable healthcare services for the people? And we can stop.
Mr. Campbell,
I was just
is
about to
there?
say.
Okay, yes. Okay. Okay. Mr. Campbell.
So let me just repeat. The question is about how do we implement more affordable healthcare for healthcare services, or how do we plan to implement that?
Yes.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And so, well, for me, one is definitely, making healthcare more accessible, not only for providers, but also for those looking for the help and assistance. As I stated earlier, Medicaid expansion is definitely something that we need to look into, in making sure that we get people insured so that they can get the help and seek out the help that they're looking for, and not just wait. A lot of times, because they are uninsured, we see that it feels like they're waiting till last minute, but it's hard to, one, take care of yourself if you don't have insurance. And so making sure that they are insured would definitely be a step in the right path. Ensuring that legislation is being passed on all fronts that closes that gap and allows individuals to make sure that they get the help that they need. Right now, we're seeing there are services being provided as we're dealing with COVID-19, and so if we're seeing free services being provided here, I don't see why we could not implement anything through a legislative basis to making sure that people get that affordable help that they need. And so definitely want to make sure that I look into that and look into how our facilities are serving those that are in a caregiving facility. And so, like nursing homes and other living facilities, looking at the long-term care possibilities and what that would run. We know if we put our money towards preventative measures, we save a whole lot of money on the back end. And so I want to make sure that we're focusing on that, and we're addressing those.
Thank you. Mr. Manley.
Yeah, healthcare is one of the issues I think is the most important issues facing, the country and our state, especially when we have, nearly 1 million people in our state who are not able to get Medicaid because they don't qualify, because our Republican governor has refused to accept the federal dollars, starting with Rick Scott refusing to accept the Obama administration dollars. I mean, free money, billions of dollars the federal government is giving to the state of Florida that we are turning down for no reason other than partisanship. And there should be no such thing as somebody not being able to afford healthcare in this country. We need to expand Medicaid. And the way that we do that is copy the models that other states are already doing that are successful, like Massachusetts is doing with MassHealth. There's successful blueprints for us to use in the state of Florida to provide healthcare to people. More funding for community health centers, like the federal dollars that are already going to states through the John McCain Bernie Sanders bill that passed years ago. Provides money for community health clinics. We need to do more of that. We need to build more hospitals in Black communities. And I think that's important for our community. And I also put an emphasis on preventative care as well, because it's so important that we tackle these problems before they get worse. A lot of people don't go to the doctor when they're sick because they know they can't afford it. They don't want to wait in the ER for hours just to get a bill and told to go home, a pain pill and told to go home. And everything will be all right. So people don't go to the doctor when they're sick, and that's not healthy for our society. So what we need to do is make healthcare more accessible to everybody. And the way we do that is several ways of doing that, such as community health clinics, expanding Medicaid, making sure that it is accessible and available for everyone within their zip code, which is important because we know the history of how healthcare has treated our communities, and particularly the Black community. But one of the priorities I want to focus on in the state legislature, which should have no problem passing, but again, Republicans control everything, is to make sure that there's no such thing as a child in our state without healthcare. And so what we need to do is make sure that we expand Medicaid in a way that allow young people, especially when they go off to college, to remain on their parents' health insurance. They do that with Obamacare already, but with Medicaid, you're kicked off at 21. Not fair, not good.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp.
Yes, I think that, at the community level, as mentioned before, could help fill the gap. I would have to do some research, but in other states, there are co-op healthcare plans. They're like community-based healthcare plans. And we need to find out if we can make that exist to fill the gap as we're in legislature fighting for these extra Medicaid dollars. They are community-based and they answer the community's needs. I'm willing to work across the aisle to appeal to our GOP opposition and try to address and appeal to them that, it's about the children. It's about the children. The children are our future, regardless of whatever they decide to do when they grow up and be that, they will be running this state. They will be running our country. So definitely we need to just continue to fight and just hope that legislature will wake up and convince our governor, or we get a new governor and we are able to better address these problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp. So to each of the candidates, someone referenced promise earlier, and they also referenced diversion. Promise is not a diversion program. Promise is not a civil citation program. Promise is a school-based disciplinary program. Civil citation is not the same thing as diversion. So we have been to Dr. Osgood and I serve on what's known as the Circuit 17 Juvenile Justice Advisory Board, and we have been pushing for civil citation, and also Judge Holmes. We all serve and pushing to move forward civil citation. We went from being one of the best at implementation to one of the worst. So I guess my question to each of you will be, do you support a civil citation? And tell me what you believe civil citation to be in Broward County. I'd like you to do that in 2 minutes or less. We'll start with Mr. Manley.
Thank you. And just to clarify, when I made my comment earlier about promise as an example of a school-based program that the school system was using to keep our kids out of jail. And as it relates to civil citation, Broward County has actually done a lot around this issue, including Commissioner Holdis, who's championed this issue extensively. And for me, I like what the Broward County has done regarding civil citation, especially for drug offenses, where they're not locking people up for having, maybe a little dime bag of weed. So I think, those are programs we need to be expanding in the county and not throwing our young people in jail. And I think there's a lot more work to do with that, with the state attorney's office and with the sheriff's office, as I've said before, and with the judges.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp, what is your understanding of civil citation, and do you support it in Broward County? And just whatever you think or know, it's fine.
Sure.
Okay.
So what little I do know is, or that I feel I understand, is that the civil citation is in place of getting a misdemeanor or a criminal charge, right? So I think that that's a great idea, because a lot of times, kids are kids and they make mistakes, due to their level of maturity and their perception of things and how they react. And the components that are involved to help them as far as counseling and the other things that are provided. I support the civil citation program, and I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
I most definitely support the civil citation program. For me, it hits personally because I worked for the state attorney's office in the victim advocate unit. I worked as a drug court, the diversion program, and getting those individuals in there, they would get charged with misdemeanors. And I would advocate on their behalf, because we know what those minor drug charges does to an individual's ability to get a quality job, to get housing, to get student loans. And so, I am for that, for ensuring that we have a civil citation program so that it's not affecting our children. I was a kid once and I messed up before, and because because I had a straight mama, she made sure she beat me straight. But at the same time, I learned from it and I got there. But what I didn't have was a record. And so I want to make sure that these kids that we are grooming to become young men and women are not starting off and behind the finish line, behind the start line before they actually begin their life. And so, yeah, I am for a civil citation program, 100%.
Okay, so one of the advantages that District 94 has had from our perspective, and I think that Dr. Osgood would agree, that we have been able to contact our representative, and to say 24/7 is not an exaggeration, when there was an issue. And so whether it be our lobbyists working with theirs, whether it be issues, whether it be promise, diversion, whatever the issue was, having a hands-on state rep who found time. And I'll give you an example. When it came to, someone mentioned HB1 earlier. HB1 is horrible, but it was worse in its early stages. And so we work with our current representative, Leader DeVos, to make sure that we were kept in the loop when the bill was written, when it was filed, when it was discussed and debated. So, and it wasn't, and I'm speaking from NAACP's perspective, and I know that others had the same privilege in order to do so. Tell me what it will be like, should you win, when the community needs to reach you and discuss issues or needs to be informed, and do that in 1 minute. And we will start with Mr. Kemp.
Yes. Yeah, I would definitely make myself available. A lot of things that I've had to deal with, others have made themselves available. And it's to me, it's, you're a servant. You're a servant. You're not just an elected official. You are a servant of the people, and you need to hear the people's voice. So I would have an open door policy. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell, I have no idea who Representative DeVos' staff is, because I never called him. And he's had the same cell since, long before he was there and he was with the city. And so tell me what will change, if anything, if you are elected, for not just for me, but for members of the community, if you are elected.
Oh, thank you for that question. One of the best things for working on the Representative DeVos is that you learn to be a community servant, and you learn what that meaning is. And so in my time since this race has, since I've announced my candidacy for this race, each part of my, each phase of this process, I've made sure I incorporated some aspect of all the apps of the community. I'm the only individual here that has qualified by petition. I've continued to knock at doors and to learn these issues. First and foremost, I continue to listen and meet people where they're at. And so it's definitely not going to change with the NAACP. I will definitely be available to the NAACP to make sure that I hear the issues, understand the perspectives, and make sure that I utilize my voice in the way that the community is asking me to.
Thank you. Mr. Manley, tell us about how accessible you will be to the community.
Well, I will always strive to be better and do better, because no one's perfect and no representative is ever perfect. But I do know that if I'm in a position, I will be accessible to everybody by phone. I'm pretty sure my phone number is all over the internet right now. And my office, I will make sure that it's an open door policy and available to everybody. I mean, I've been accessible to people, I mean, over the past few years in a number of ways. I've always gotten calls at 12 or 1 in the morning from people, people who's, from mothers telling me my son's been arrested. Can you help me? Can you help bail them out? From people who need help with rent in the district, who need help paying their light bill, whatever I can do to help them, even if it's $25 or $50, whatever I can do to help them. And so, I've been that type of person because I know, there was a time in my life when there was nobody there to really lift me up.
Thank you.
And to guide me. And so that's the type of representative I'll be. I'll be accessible to NAACP and anyone in the district that needs.
Thank you.
Hear from me.
Okay. Ms. Justice Williams or Monique, do you have something?
Yes, I have one more question for the
Yes, ma'am.
evening. So another topic that's important to me is voting restoration for our convicted felons. So how do you as a candidate plan to work with the disenfranchised population to restore those rights? And are there any organizations that you support that the community should be aware of?
Let's start with Mr. Manley.
I heard the first part of that question. The second part I didn't quite get. Could you repeat?
Yes, the second question was, are there any organizations that you support that the community should be aware of?
Yes. So I'll start with that part first. Actually, what was formerly New Florida Majority, now Florida Rising, is doing a lot of great work in our community. The Florida Rights Restoration Coalition did a lot of work to get Amendment 4 passed. And there are a number of other organizations that work day in, day night to make sure people's rights are restored and that they can pay their fines and fees. The will of the voters in Florida passed. Over 70% of people voted for this. And, the Republicans in Tallahassee decided we were going to put a poll tax on people. Unfortunately, we have to deal with that. And so, while we fight that battle, we need to make sure that we are paying people's fines and fees for them so that they don't have to come up with that cost and be disenfranchised for that reason. So that's one of the things I think we must do and we need to do. As someone who comes from a family where, my mom's rights, she didn't get her rights restored until a few, just not long ago, and got to vote for her son, got to get her rights restored. I know this on a personal level. I know Mr. Kemp as well. He's a friend and he's talked about this issue extensively as well. And so I know in Tallahassee, we got to be willing to, fight to make sure that this attack on the rights of people to participate in our democracy doesn't continue.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. First and foremost, I definitely want to make sure that we're fighting for those issues, and restoring their rights. I want to make sure that we're not just while we're trying to get their rights restored, we are also trying to help them get regenerated into the community, providing services that will assist them in any type of way. I think what sometimes we fail to do is keep people engaged. And so we want to keep them engaged in ways that allows them to continue to feel part of the democratic process. As being part of the Faith in Florida Central Broward chapter, they have done amazing work in pushing out what that help looks like, and we want to continue doing that. And so, and then also the clerk of court has some finances available to help with raising money for Florida Rights Restoration Coalitions. And so I want to definitely make sure that we're continuing to fight in Tallahassee and pass legislation that allows these individuals to overcome these obstacles that has been put in their place since we have passed that bill. But at the same time, we want to also continue to work with them here and making sure that we're providing services that's most necessary to them in ensuring that they understand the process and everything that is going on.
Thank you. And Mr. Kemp.
Yes. Wow. Well, that was something that I personally experienced, and I did a lot of work with the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, spoke in synagogues, churches, employee union groups, wherever they asked me to speak. I think one of the things that people need to understand is I think we need to keep showing more examples of the people who have had a second chance and have thriving careers and own a business, that they are productive members of society. And also too, there's a lot of other things that come into play. We're probably on the verge of legalizing marijuana here in the state of Florida. We need to start looking at all the people that have received frivolous charges for possession of marijuana or marijuana charges, that they are wiped out, they're dropped, or they are in some type of program that they need to be a part of the industry. They need to learn how to make money in this industry and it not be the hedge funds on Wall Street and people who have never stepped foot in our community and want to open marijuana medical clinics in our community. It just it's just not fair. It's not common sense. Also, too, with the voting rights restoration, at the federal level, the Biden administration just reversed a Trump policy. When they passed the CARES Act due to the pandemic, a lot of people got released from incarceration early that had lesser charges. If the Trump policy had stayed in place when the pandemic wound down, they would have been sent back, which is very inhumane because they're already out, they're already a part of society, and the Biden administration was able to get that reversed. So we need to take examples like that while the fire's hot, as they say, to use that here in the state in our legislative process. Thank you.
I want to switch a little bit. I want to talk about election integrity. And so we want to talk about campaign integrity. We want to talk about, there are a lot of shenanigans going around. We have folk who, signs are missing, signs are damaged. And then today, several folk email me. It's a flyer. And they said one of them is a fake flyer. So the flyer starts out, and I'm sure each of you know what I'm talking about, with endorsed candidates by one of this progressive PACs. And they say that that they've chosen their candidates. In some places they chose several. And then another flyer comes out and it's listed as a voter's guide and it has different candidates on there. So are either of you connected to either one of these flyers? And I particularly want to know about the fake one that they say is not what was the intended one. So what is going on with these flyers, with the signage, with all of the shenanigans that are happening? So we will start where we left off at. Mr. Kemp, do you know anything about these flyers that are being texted around and emailed around with candidates switched and faces and just ridiculousness?
No, this is the first time I've heard about it. I didn't even know that was going on. And no, I'm not associated with any of that activity.
Okay, and so I don't know if you have had signs up and missing or literature taken, any of those things.
No, I have not.
Okay. Mr. Campbell, are you affiliated with either of these flyers? Did you have any signs that were damaged, taken, moved, replaced, any of those things?
I'm familiar with the flyer, but I was endorsed at the original flyer in which I was endorsed by the National Haitian American Elected Official Progressive Network. I'm familiar with that, but I did see the fake flyer, but I am not a part of any of election integrity. I I've been solely focused on my campaign and just running a race that keeps our community well informed about the issues. I'm not getting caught up in the hoopla of signs, and so I haven't been putting any time and effort into that. But I'm not missing any signs from last check.
Okay. And Mr. Manley.
Yes, I'm aware of the original flyer that was sent out. I was made aware of it, and I was made aware of the other one as well. I'm not affiliated with it. I became aware of it when I saw that my likeness was being used on the flyer without my permission. And of course, I'm trying to trace and see who that is because I want permission in order for my photo to be on anyone's flyer. So I'm not affiliated with that, but I have had signs taken. I don't have that many signs in the district, like 10 or 15 of them, but I've had several of them torn down, stolen, and I've had to replace them and get them put back up. And these are expensive signs. These are not cheap. They cost $150 a piece. And, we've had them torn down in Fort Lauderdale downtown. We've had them torn down in Lauderdale. So we don't know who's behind that. I mean, I have an idea who, but I think it's an unfair campaign practice for someone to be tearing down signs, expensive signs at that. So I've had that happen. I've had literature stolen. I've had people come on my property to my house and steal the yard sign out of my house, out of the yard. So I've had people do that, go to my supporters' house and steal yard signs out of the yard from people who they don't even know, from people who are supporting me in my campaign. So I've had all types of nasty things done to me, text messages and robocalls sent out, some homophobic in nature, nasty stuff happening. So I don't think, I can say for sure, I don't think it's anyone on this call, but I know where this stuff is coming from. And I wish it would stop because we want to hear about the issues. People I'm talking to, they care about healthcare. They care about how they're going to pay the rent. They care about the issues that are really affecting them right now. They don't want to hear all of this noise. And so, I've been upset about this because I've kept my campaign clean. My people haven't been going out messing with anybody's stuff. I haven't attacked any of my opponents. I haven't sent out nasty mail, nasty texts, nasty robocalls when I have the ability to do that. But I have seen that in return.
Very disappointing, particularly coming out of our community. I think it's unnecessary as well, quite frankly. But I know that there are some folk who've had their signs taken. And yes, they are expensive. And so, we have had some complaints of folk who, I have some family members who had some yard signs taken from their front yards. And so you have an opportunity to, to sell yourself. We have an option to vote for the candidate of our choice. And so if we want to have a yard sign, it seems to me that we ought to be able to do that without having any worries about it. But, we've got cameras. So if that happens, if you hear that the NAACP wanted to file charges, that would be correct because, enough is enough. And I see Dr. Osgood, many of my signs have been taken down all over town. I actually have a video of someone throwing my opponent's literature in the front of Modco. I think there's enough of that already. We need to get back to the issues. I mean, that's absolutely. If you have to do that to win, then maybe there's something wrong with you and your campaign and your strategies there. Let's get back to criminal justice, and so we have from the NAACP standpoint, we have several lawsuits that are pending. One of them, of course, is HB1. That is the anti-protest bill. Another one would be SB 90. SB 90 is the voter suppression bill. Each step of the way, we have been able to work with the representative who currently holds your seat. As a matter of fact, I will be the person representing our organization. And during my deposition, I reference many times information and the cooperation of the current leader. And so it's going to be very important that whoever wins understands the issue of the community. We work through Amendment 4. It is going to be a Herculean task with the few numbers of the Democrats that are going to be in Tallahassee upon your arrival. So tell me how it is. I mean, you know, you had a little fluff going on there, but do you honestly believe that you will be able to work and get anything accomplished when the other side has basically a super majority? How do you intend to go about attacking issues that are certainly going to work against us? I understand the governor's article. The governor says he wants to remove vote by mail boxes, early voting boxes. He doesn't think that the purging law is sufficient. He should have more time to purge folk from the rolls. So what is your, and let's do this quick. So tell us, how is it you plan to work across the aisle with your colleagues, when you know that you're going to be outnumbered? So let's start with Mr. Campbell.
Thank you for that question. Yes, it's going to be definitely a tough task. It's not an easy thing. The first thing I plan to do is once I'm elected is to start reaching out to my freshman Republican across the aisle, talk to them about just getting to know them on a personal basis so that we can start making that connection. I think one of the things that we're seeing in Tallahassee is that sides are not talking no more, and it's too separated. And so I want to begin reaching out, making that conversation and on a personal level, and then definitely grow from there. I think having those conversations and knowing that I'm not going to back down and I'm not going to stop having those conversations, even though I may disagree with them. I'm gonna find a level ground where we can definitely make sure that we are fighting these terrible bills, but also getting funding that is much needed for our community and for the state of Florida. And so that's where I my whole entire focus is, community oriented all the way through. And so it's all about talking with them and definitely figuring out where I can be able to get things done. But also when I come home, I'm coming home and making sure I'm also talking with community organizations and community members and community leaders on what can we instill in the moments of transitional phase where I am still trying to make my way in Tallahassee, also getting things done down here. So I'm just thinking outside the box, and I'm continually going to be thinking outside the box.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp.
Yes. Yeah, definitely you would need to try to work across the aisle. One of the things they need to understand is, although the Republicans are very hardline and they vote along party lines, is that with Amendment 4, it affects their own voters. There's no getting around it. There's no denying it. It impacts your own voters, your own base. And as we know, I think the statistic was something like 1 out of every 10 Floridian knows somebody that has a felony charge or has been impacted by having their voting rights taken away. So, I would try to, appeal on the commonality and the things that we have in common, to work across the aisle. There are Army veterans that, have had their voting rights taken away. And if you went down the list of felony charges that could result in you getting your voting rights taken away, you'd be very surprised. You let a Mylar balloon off into the air, that's a felony charge. So they should be finding Disney World, right? Anyway, with regard to HB1, we knew that was a fiasco going in. And as soon as people started protesting about freedom in Cuba, that it made that law worthless. It showed favoritism, and we knew who that bill was designed for. As far as voter suppression, I would continue to work with organizations like the NAACP, the Urban League, Florida Rights Restoration, Florida Rising. A lot of the unions supported it, to have continual conversations and feedback on how we can tweak and fine tune a more holistic and humanitarian approach to voter rights restoration. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manley.
Yeah, so working across the aisle is very important. I'm never afraid to talk to Republicans. I mean, I'm probably the most liberal person on this call, I'll be honest. But I'm never afraid to talk to Republicans because in many cases, we don't see eye to eye, but we have different solutions for different issues. And sometimes there needs to be more listening. But I think it's also important to understand that in Tallahassee, that, that's not the case. It's not that two sides aren't trying to work together or talk or listen. There's one side, the Republicans, that refuse to listen to the Democrats. The Democrats have been fighting tooth and nail on voting rights, to protect our right to protest on all of these different issues. And Republicans have continuously just shut the door in their faces because they can, like they said, because we can. And I think that's a shame. And so, I won't go up there thinking that I'm going to pass everything and get everything done because I know the reality of the numbers. Those numbers are definitely Republican supermajority. And so they can do whatever they want. But we just got to try. We just have to be willing to go up there to Tallahassee and use our voice so that when people look, they know that somebody was up there, speaking out against this. Because one thing that I know for sure, I mean, we've seen this in Washington, we've seen this in Tallahassee, we've seen this everywhere, is, they expect to do nasty things and, in the middle of the night, they expect to do nasty things when no one is looking and no one is holding them accountable. But in many cases, they'll back off some of the worst things if, everyone's paying attention, everyone's speaking up about these things. And we've seen that happen a number of times. So, I won't shy away from talking to Republicans. I think we owe each other having that conversation in a civil way because we all live in this state and we can't all see ourselves as enemies, because if we're going to live in this state together, we need to be willing to sit down at the table and have a conversation. But the truth of the matter is, we got to be willing to stand our ground and make sure people know and understand that Republicans have been controlling this state for the last 30, 40 years. And this is the situation we're in right now. Thousands dead from COVID, massive unemployment, our prisons full. And so the issue is the burden of this doesn't lie on the Democratic Party. Right now, it lies on the Republican supermajority, the Republican governor, and the Republicans to get their act together and come to the table.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from Ms. Lithcutt, Ms. Justice Williams, or Ms. Cunningham?
I just have one follow-up question to the question that you asked. You were asking them if what were their plans to reach across the aisle to work with the Republicans. How do you plan to work with the Republican constituents in this area so that they feel that they aren't left out, since you guys are Democratic candidates?
Let's start with Mr. Kemp.
Well, I'm already acquainted with African Americans that are Republicans. We've had debates, we've had discussions, and at the end of the day, we both want the same thing. It's, a matter of you just chose to register as a Republican for whatever reasons those were, that's your choice. Also too, as they say, how do you know what the other side is thinking if you don't dialogue with them? So there was a group of guys I used to meet when the Starbucks was open on Federal Highway in Broward downtown. And we were polar opposites in political ideology. And they used to tease me about wearing my Obama bracelet and stuff. But at the end of the day, it was about the conversation, having coffee together before we went our separate ways. And, there used to be a time it was like that in DC. We live in divisive times. And so, one of the reasons why I'm running is that I hope that I could be a voice of reason in these divisive times. You can't turn a light out on truth. And, common sense, always is something that, makes sense. It just makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manley.
Yeah, thank you. So, I've always said, when you're a representative for this district, you have to be a representative for everyone. You can't be a representative for a certain part of the district, a certain population, or a certain group, someone who look a certain way, someone who love a certain way. You have to be representative of everybody, which I think I am. And so I've had conversations with Republicans too. I mean, a lot of my friends are Republicans. I mean, going back to high school, and I mean, when I went up the boys' state, when American Legion Post 226 sent me up the boys' state, that place was full of Republicans. I mean, it was very few Democrats. I mean, they took 500 young people from across the state and stuck us in a room in Tallahassee. And I somehow got elected Speaker of the House there as a Black kid from Broward County who was pretty far left to them. And so, it's all about having conversations. It's all about relationships. Getting things done is about relationships and having those conversations. And so, I have Republican friends, and we taunt each other. We kind of got a little hectic last year when Trump was running, and I didn't want to talk to them for weeks because they were supporting Trump. But at the end of the day, it's all about having that dialogue. It's about having those conversations and talking with each other, because at the end of the day, we all live here. We all live in this district, in this community. We're going to drink the same water. Our kids are going to go to the same schools. And we have to make sure that we make this community better for all of us. We can't have this, chronic divisiveness for forever. We have to eventually, this country cannot function this way with everyone wanting to kill each other. We have to find a way to make this country work. And so I definitely agree with that question, and I definitely think it's important for all of us to reach across the aisle.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I certainly agree with my opponent there. We have to talk to everyone and anyone, and to that test, that's what I've been doing. I've been attending HOA meetings. I've been walking the districts. I've walked Melrose. I walked Parkway. I walked Dillard. I walked Wilton Manors. And as soon as I finish Wilton Manors, I'm taking my butt to Oakland Park. And so we're going around trying to make sure that everybody stays well informed. And so nobody gets left behind is the motto that I'm living by. I'm talking to anybody. If I see them on the street in the neighborhood, I'm talking to them. And so I want to make sure that continues. Like I tell people at the doors, I'm walking from here to Kingdom Come, because after this, I'm still going to continue to be walking, because I want to understand what's going on in our communities, in each 6 of our cities, and I want to make sure that it's being reflective within the policies and within my fight when I'm up there in Tallahassee and having these conversations. So I think that's very important, and I'm going to continue to do that. I'll make sure to be at HOA meetings. I'll make sure to be at organization meetings, at the NAACP meetings. I'll make sure to hear everybody, because everybody that attend these meetings are not just straight Democrats. There are also Republicans as well. And so I definitely am knowledgeable of that, and I'll make sure to continue to do what I'm doing now, and that is listen to the issues and make sure I implement them in a way that's representative and reflective of our community.
Thank you. And we're going to ask Laura Richardson and Ms. Hampton Clements to put their question in the chat very quickly. And while they do that, we are going to, let me just make sure. Are there any, Ms. Cunningham, Ms. Justice Williams, are there any other questions?
No, not from me. All of the questions have been asked and answered.
Thank you. Ms. Justice
Same
Williams?
here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to ask more questions, but I believe everything has been asked and answered.
Okay. And so what do we want to do? And I hope they're talking. I hope they're typing fast. Someone check the Q&A and see, or in the chat to see if their questions are there. We are going to do a 2-minute wrap up, and we will start with Mr. Kemp. So 2 minutes, Mr. Kemp, and finish out and tell us anything that you think we need to know before we go and cast our ballot. You have the floor, sir.
Okay, yes. Good evening, everyone, and to all the listeners out there and the voters who will be voting in this election. As we know, this is a special election and it's a very short election cycle. And I thank you for the opportunity that people were able to hear what we had to say. As I said before, I hope that, I can be a voice of reason in these divisive times. It would be an honor to represent this vibrant and diverse community. We have many people from many walks of life, even if the majority of us are of African descent. We are a melting pot. I have been serving the community for many years through various means, as I've mentioned before. On the Charter Revisions Board, I've been through Leadership Broward. I helped raise money for United Way. Was part of the original Sis-Trunk Charrette. I also, was on that Finance Audit Committee where $90 million was just shy of $100 million that went out to the local Black community development corporations for affordable housing. And, affordable housing is one of the things that's dear to my heart. Being a former banker and having financed some urban league projects down in Miami and churches that we financed and Black businesses. So I would take that passion, experience, and leadership to Tallahassee, and I would try my hardest to make things happen, be a voice for the community. And I wish everybody a prosperous and wonderful new year. And if you want to look me up, you can go to www.electrodkemp.com. That's electrodkemp.com. I will also give you my campaign cell number, and that's 954-383-8686. 954-383-8686 if you have any more questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Manley, 2 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you for this opportunity. Listen, we've been through a lot these past few years. From COVID-19 pandemic, the housing crisis, racial tensions in this country have gone off the wall. And so what we really need right now is someone who can listen, someone who can go out there and do the work. I know that I'm that person. And, I've seen a lot happen in this community growing up here. I have seen everything from homelessness myself to gun violence affecting me and my family. And so, at this critical time in this short election period, we have an important decision and choice to make. And, I hope people will make the right decision on January 11th, 2022. My website is elijahmanley.com for you to take a look. I got in this race because I believe that I was the person who could deliver the results for this district, as I strongly do in Tallahassee. Public service is such a privilege for anybody to seek to serve their community in this office. And, as a young person, a lot of people, I was knocking on doors today and someone told me, "You sure you're old enough to run?" And I offered to show them my ID. And, really we had that conversation and, they told me, coming from a different background, a different political party, they really want someone that can listen to them and hear them. And I think that's what we all want. We want someone who can listen to us and our concerns and our entire community, no matter where we're from, what we look like, who we love, and what we believe in. And I know that that's the type of representative that I will be in Tallahassee. And so I'm asking everyone to vote. Vote like your life depends on it. January 11th, 2022, early voting starts Saturday, January 1st through the 9th. My birthday is on the 6th, so I'll be out early voting my entire birthday with you guys. I'll be turning 23 years old. So I won't quite be the 22-year-old candidate anymore. I'll be 23. But I honestly thank this community that has given so much to me. As a kid, I never thought I'd see myself running for anything. And the opportunities that have been made available to me have changed my life, have made me a better person, have allowed me to grow. And so I thank you for this opportunity, and don't forget to vote.
Thank you. And Mr. Campbell.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm just feel blessed to be in this position. One of the things I didn't get to say, which I should say, is that I'm currently being endorsed by the current representative, Bobby DuBose, in this race. But that's endorsements don't win us votes, get people out the vote. And so, I'm showing through my actions that I am familiar with these issues. I am continuing to learn these issues. That is why I have qualified by petition, because I realize how important it is to have an input have our community have an input on our elections. I have experienced the climate of the current House, and for that I'm familiar with what it will take to get things done. I have a passion for my community. I'm listening day in and day out. I have a passion to get things done, and and given the opportunity, I will continue to make an impact on our community, not only here in District 94, but also in Tallahassee. And so I'm going to start off the same way that I've begun, and I'm going to end up with the same way that I've begun, is that my name is Daryl Campbell. I'm a candidate running for state representative District 94. This is not about me. This is about our community, and I'm here to represent our community. And so I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for your support, but most importantly, I'm asking you to spread the word. Let your family, friends, and your neighbors know that there's an election and we want their vote too as well. So thank you. And you can read more about me by going to darylcampbell.org.
Thank you. Dr. Roslyn Osgood.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to defer to our Connections Committee co-chair, Dr. Alpha Hameen. Our chair, Henrietta Davis, is not able to be with us on camera tonight. So I'm going to ask Dr. Alpha Hameen if she could come and give closing remarks on behalf of the Zeta Rho Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the premier chapter. Dr. Hameen.
Thank you, Dr. Hameen.
Thank you. We are appreciative of everyone who participated and joined us tonight as we co-sponsor with the NAACP this phenomenal, we will say phenomenal, because this forum was necessary. It is the purpose of highlighting what we need to know so that we become better educated voters. On behalf of Alpha Kappa Alpha's sorority, the Zeta Rho Omega Chapters Connection and Social Action Committee, we say thank you and look forward to us partnering again with the NAACP. On behalf of our co-chairman, Earlene Striggles-Horn, and our chairman, Henrietta Davis, we say good night. Thank you.
And I want to say thank you and let you know that in addition to the Alpha Kappa Alpha Zeta Rho Omega, the premier chapter, we also had Delta Sigma Theta. We had North, South, and Broward alumni chapter on. I saw the Fort Lauderdale chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi. I saw the president and members of the FAMU National Alumni chapter, the Broward County chapter. I saw members who are also members of the Fort Lauderdale Black Policemen's Association. I see Zeta Phi Beta Sorority, the Delta Eta Zeta chapter, the National Council of Negro Women, and the Order of Eastern Stars Golden Victor number 44, all hung out just to make sure that we understand the issues and the candidates before we cast our ballots. If you are not a member of NAACP, we ask that you join us. The only thing that's missing from the struggle is you. And so we wanted to make sure that we get out that the election is on January the 11th. Early voting starts on Saturday. You do have until January 1, I know it's crazy, right? January 1 to request a vote by mail ballot. If you have not gotten it by now, then chances are you're not going to get it. I would contact and urge anyone you know to contact the Supervisor of Elections office. There is even a possibility where it could be printed and you could arrange to pick up, or I've even known that they even deliver those ballots to folk who are unable to get there. We know that as soon as you make your decision, we ask that you please cast your ballot. I would say, quite frankly, it's too late to mail it. Don't get caught up in that trap again. I was talking to one of my aunts who said, well, I don't want to go there. I don't want, they haven't mailed it. I don't want to give my social security number. And I was like, don't nobody want your social security number. This is necessary. When you register to vote, it's there. They have your, the last 4 digits of your social already. We gotta vote no matter what. The time for excuses is over. And so whoever your candidate is, and let me just say this, all candidates were invited. If folk don't want to come and ask you for your vote, then that is certainly their choice. Just it is your choice to vote for whomever it is, the candidate is your choice. I personally don't vote for anybody. Don't ask me for my vote, but that's just me. And you have an opportunity to check their websites. You heard the candidates. We ask that vote for somebody. Call people. We still have folk who don't know, and it's sad to say. It's actually very embarrassing that the congressman has transitioned. We still have people figuring things out, but it is our job to make sure that they understand and they go on to cast their ballots. So we have our next election, January 11th. Early voting starts. It's only going to be 8 days, ending on the 9th. So let's not do the excuse piece. Let's not mail our vote by mail ballots anymore. It's too late. Joe Scott probably won't tell you because he needs to play nice with the United States Postal Service, but we don't have to. A lot of folk vote did not get counted. On the last election cycle on November 2nd, it was really taking 2 weeks for vote by mail ballots to arrive from Broward to Broward. Remember, we lost our distribution center. Our ballots go down to Opelika, and sometimes they don't come back. So we don't risk not don't risk not having your vote count. Don't be disenfranchised. Make sure that we vote for the candidate of our choice. In this District 94, anybody, it's a universal voting situation, meaning Democrats, Republicans, NPAs, Libertarians, whatever, you all will be able to cast your ballot. So let folks know that they should cast their ballot without fail. There are no excuses. And the National Council of Negro Women is on here also. Don't have, somebody's getting me in trouble. That's on here. But we all are working together for the same cause. And so we want to make sure that we have representation. You all know that we haven't had representation in the congressman seat. It'll be like over 9 months by the time he's there. We will need to replace folk. Bobby, quite frankly, was going to be gone anyway. He was terming out. So we need to get past whatever who ran, didn't run. It's over. Let's just cast a vote and get our new candidate, the person that's going to represent our community and our issues best of all. And with that, Minister Edwards, if all hearts and minds are clear, we will ask that you take us home.
Madam President, let us go to the Lord in prayer. Eternal God and Father, we are grateful for what our eyes have seen and our ears have heard. Now, Lord, it is our prayer that you would continue to bless this partnership for progress with Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and the NAACP. God, we ask that you would renew the zeal of your people as we fight on, God, for representation, for civil rights, and for equal rights. We ask that you would be in our midst. Bless each candidate as they pursue. And then, God, let them run with dignity and let them serve in integrity. This is our prayer in Christ Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone. You're much appreciated. And good luck.